Hello, Alexis. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm delighted to have you on Confidence Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time, and we have a lot to get into. So I'm going to start this podcast like I do all the rest, which is asking you, what does confidence mean to you?
Mm. What confidence means to me is the ability to authentically advocate for my highest values in a way that I'm coming from love and coming back to love when I'm advocating for those values.
I love that. I haven't heard it from the aspect of self-advocacy, so I really love what you said there. And I know that you are very transparent in your journey to actually get to self-advocacy. And now you work with women as a mind, body, and soul connector. So I want to know a little bit about the method to your magic.
Yeah. Well, I am very transparent about my journey, and I believe that a big part of how I work has been influenced by that. And it's only by uh, growth. And, a lot of times we'll look at things that have transpired in our lives as good or bad. I don't. I look at it as growth, opportunity for growth. And that growth is really what the has allowed the foundation of how I work to then build upon itself by going out and exploring all the things that really meant something to me and my highest values. That's why I can be confident about the work that I do, is because it's coming authentically from self-advocacy, and that I really care about the whole picture when working with a person. I'm not just going to work with their mind and forget about their body and think that those two things aren't connected and that they won't have a ripple effect. Just like I'm not going to ignore the soul or the spirit, or however people like to refer to that. Scientifically, it's energy, but that energy is informative. I believe that the soul is why we are here, and the body is how we are here, and the mind and the heart are the conduits for that energy, of either making sure that they're aligned or and connected, or misaligned and disconnected. And so it's really my method is working with the whole being, if you will, the spiritual being having the human being experience. And it's only through my journey that I've come to understand the importance of all those pieces and how they work together.
Yeah, I think it's all of what you said is really insightful, but I really love what you kind of pointed out about the fact that things aren't necessarily good or bad. They're really just a part of our journey, and we have to use them to understand the lessons that the life, God, the universe is trying to teach us in order to inform, okay, how does this mind, body, soul connection grow from this experience?
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. If if we're not growing, we're shrinking, and
Yeah.
not here to play small. So
Not at all. I heard that. Yeah, you only get one life, YOLO. Um, so I
hello.
know that as women, we go through so many changes and times and seasons of our life. And I know that a lot of times we attribute our confidence, our self-worth, our value with our looks, because
Mm,
we see it everywhere. It's on, social media, it's been on the magazines, like whatever like period of time you can look back in history, we've always been rated on our looks. And I know that you went from a period, which we all kind of go through, of basing your kind of value on that as well. And you went through this period of like basing your outer or your inner value based on what was outside, and trying to fix what was outside or inside based on what was outside. So tell me about that journey and how you got through that season.
absolutely. Well, the seed is planted for all of us very early, in that and this just doesn't just go for women, it goes for men too, in that when we are born these infants that don't have resources, that don't have, the power to and the ability to self-advocate, we are completely reliant on our community, on our caregivers, on our providers to get our basic needs met to survive, let alone thrive. And so we adopt the values of those around us, and will, at the cost and the sacrifice of our own, whether we're aware of them or not, at that point, it becomes a strategy, a survival strategy, a thrival strategy to hijack the values of the people around us. And one of the examples that I always love to give here is, how do you know what your name is? Someone told you.
Yeah.
And you just said, okay, then if that's who you say I am, that's who I am. And I'm just going to keep regurgitating that for the rest of my life and squeeze myself into that. Now, there are a lot of people who, as they get older, they say, well, no, I'm going to reclaim my identity, and I'm going to name myself, Sunshine Appleby or whatever. But, it really is such a milestone of really highlighting and pinpointing how we really do give our inner authority away. Mm-hmm. And the seed that gets planted very early for let's say women, in terms of what you're speaking to, of an outer beauty, or what the most valuable feminine assets are, whatever that may be, superficially, is based in misogyny, and it's based in patriarchy, and it goes, all the way back, and it's embedded in religion and all of these different things. But the truth of the matter is, how it affects us in our daily life is that we're constantly bombarded with overt messaging, but also very subconscious messaging. Nobody really ever thinks about consciously, well, my name was, thrust upon me, and I get to reclaim my relationship with how I identify in the world, even just through my name. But think about all of the messages, again, conscious and unconscious, that are thrust upon us as women, and what beauty is and what lovability is. And for me, that got very confused, and I really got to a place where I thought, well, if I'm not lovable on the inside, there's at least something that I can do about the outside to get the world to buy in to the fact that I'm lovable, and to the fact that I have value. And maybe if my exterior fits that mold, people won't see that I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
And I tried to disguise myself as lovable by putting myself on operating tables and carving myself aesthetically into something that I thought would be more pleasing.
Yeah. And I think that we all do that, even if it's not plastic surgery, in one way or another, whether it's, the contour we put on our face, or the way that we're dressing, or if there's always some outside influence that's telling us, okay, this is what's cool, this is what's in, this is what's going to get you accepted, or even this is what you have to do to not get questioned about who you are and how you want to show up. And I think it's so important to be able to identify when those thoughts are flooding our mind, or when we're receiving those messages, so that we can kind of separate ourselves and our true nature from those things that we're being told.
That's right. And that's where the self-advocacy comes in. And it's hard, because we have to sift through all of these layers of, part of that subconscious development is that we're in competition with one another. And that if someone's more beautiful than you, or someone's more talented than you, or somebody's more fill in the blank than you, that somehow they're your competition, and they're going to be taking something from you. And it puts you into this scarcity mindset that then makes you lose your community and your culture, which is your tribe of fellow sisters. Yeah. So there's that to weed through. And there is the idea of, women should be seen and not heard, so we contain our emotions and our authentic expression. And then there's the, good girls don't dress like that. And then we have to squeeze ourselves into well, I can't dress like that because then I'm asking for uncertainty and unsafety. But in the same breath, if I'm in competition, I have to dress sexy because otherwise I'm not going to get love, or I'm not going to get an opportunity. And so we're in this constant conflict with ourselves and with each other that really isn't serving us in our highest values and what we're really here to experience and achieve.
Yeah. And when you hit on scarcity mindset, especially in that kind of era of comparison, I think that's really important to touch upon, because when we notice other people doing well, or just other women looking great, doing great things, the natural inclination for a lot of people is to compare and then to compete rather than to collaborate. And I think that when we kind of step into this mindset of abundance, we're able to actually see that the more opportunities that our fellow sister have or our fellow human beings have, the more that there actually is for us. And so we can stop competing, we can let down our guard, and we can just be ourselves and show up authentically. But it's hard to do that when the rest of the world isn't necessarily thinking that way.
It's true. And that's why these conversations are so important, because sunlight is the best disinfectant. And as long as we continue to play the game the way it was taught to us, then we're never going to be able to create our own rules or realize that there really are no rules, and we all get to live into our own fulfillment, despite what's been thrust upon us or taught to us. And it's only through awareness, I believe that awareness is our superpower, that we even have a shot at realizing what our options are to choose something different. And to me, choice is the root center of empowerment. And that's really the work that I know I'm up to in the world, I believe you're up to in the world, is really empowering people, as cliche as it sounds, to live their best life.
It does sound so cliche and so corny. I know I'm like the corniest person now, right? But it's true. When we are able to identify who we are, de-identify with our surroundings, the things that we've been told, the labels that have been put upon us, the expectations that the world has of us, we're able to step into our power, be empowered, and live our best lives. So I love that you say that. And I want to take a step back and go back to this idea of comparison, because I know one place that people compare a lot is motherhood. Looking at what is she doing with her kids? How does she feel? What's this experience supposed to be like? But a lot of times we also kind of hide the dark pieces of motherhood and what that journey looks like. And postpartum depression is real. Postpartum anxiety is very real. And I think, fortunately, we're starting to talk about it as a society more and more. But I want to know your experience with that and how you were able to navigate your mindset to move beyond that.
Well, I will say that it was extremely challenging for me with my first son. I suffered severe postpartum depression and even ended up getting involved in a charity called Postpartum Progress, with a dear friend of mine who also suffered from postpartum depression, and trying to make a difference around the stigma of postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. It is very real. And it's only when you're in the midst of it that you will even find, I don't want to generalize, but that you will often find women that are willing to talk to you about their experience and open up about it. Rather than when you're pregnant and nobody wants to, quote unquote, rain on your parade, and tell you all of the things that are potential challenges ahead of you. But I will say that for me, postpartum depression was very severe with my first son. And it was actually only on his first birthday that I was able to look at him and have a sense of, for the very first time, I think I can do this. And that full year prior, were thoughts of, I've ruined my life. I want to take a baseball bat to everything that I see. I had fantasies of getting in my car and driving away and just vanishing, never to be seen or heard from again. Mine didn't go as far as full-blown psychosis, but I definitely had had some real seriously concerning moments. And with my second child, I was blessed in that I didn't go through the same severity of postpartum, if I even went through it at all with my second. But having had that experience, I know how real it is. And I also know from being vocal about it with so many women then disclosing to me their experiences with it, that it's really predominant. And you're right, it's not something that is widely discussed.
Yeah, and it's still that because there's a stigma around mental health, right? Especially when this is supposed to, it's not just mental health now. This is a period of life where you're supposed to be so happy. And so people suffer in silence because you have, again, this label or this expectation that doesn't meet the very physical reality of what's going on in your brain chemically.
Yeah, and most people don't realize that absolutely everything, scientifically, everything that happens in life um, is created in balance and in equanimity. You know, you think of the tides. As far as it ebbs back, it will flow forward. Think of a tsunami, all the way back, all the way forward, right? For the yin, there's yang. For day, there's night. For light, there's equal shadow. What comes up must go down equal distance. You can't separate two sides of a magnet. I mean, all of these things are evident even in our nature's cycle of birth and death. Everything exists in total equanimity. And that's true in our experiences. I mean, it's true for the cells in our body, particle and antiparticle, to the experience of, let's say, birth or death. There's, you know, scientifically, it's proven, a la the DiMartini method that I'm a facilitator of, that there is always equal positive to negative in charges, which include our thoughts and our feelings. So for as much as there may be relief in a certain situation, there's also grief. For as much as there's joy, there's pain, whatever, however you want to deem it. Mm-hmm. And you know, in having this birth, there is this great joy for, you know, bringing this life in and this love in, and you know, in our case, luckily having a mostly healthy baby. There were challenges. But then there was also this grief, this mourning period of, I've lost who I was. I've lost my individuality. I've lost the quality of life that I had before I was a mother. And they're both equal. And you can't ignore one or the other or suppress one or the other, because they're both true.
Yeah.
And they have an effect.
And I love what you said about balancing that and being able to accept that, because I think that's where we begin to kind of step into our truth and understand that the human emotions that we're feeling, the things that are going on within our mind, our body, our soul, our spirit, those are supposed to happen. They're natural and they're okay. And I think that it's important to know that it's okay. And if you need help, just to seek it out, but it's not something that you should be ashamed of, which is really something that I want to hone in on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is balance is inherent, and it's just whether or not we're looking for it. You know, it's like the sun may be up, it doesn't mean the moon doesn't exist. Right. And that's true with absolutely every experience that we have. It's just the perspective with which we see it. Are we conscious of the upsides and unconscious to the downsides, or vice versa?
Yeah. So I know that you went through a period of time where you were working on yourself, and now that's something that we do every day, you know, cultivating confidence daily. But you're now at a place where you're managing an amazing and successful business. I want to know the story to how you got to where you are as a coach and as a leader.
One authentically confident, heartfelt conversation at a time.
Yeah.
You know, I was part of a community for a while called 4PC with an amazing coach, Rich Litvin. And he wrote a book with another really renowned coach, Steve Chandler, called The Prosperous Coach. And that book had a big impact on me, because it really, it stripped away all of the noise that's out there in our field of coaching, right? It's like everybody's got 3 steps to the 3 things you want most, and you know, a 6-figure business in 6 days, and look over here, there's this flashy thing, I've got this secret, and I've got this methodology, and there's just so much noise out there. And what was really great about the prosperous coach approach was how simple it was, in that the truth is the only way that anybody's ever going to have a deep and powerful relationship with somebody is by starting with having a deep and powerful connection with them. And that happens one conversation at a time. And I really I testify to the fact that I believe that my business is thriving in the way that it is because it's not about the big splashy game as much as it is about how can I serve the person that's sitting in front of me.
Yeah. And I think that kind of speaks to how you operate from this place of authenticity. It's not about, getting rich quick or how many clients can I get. It's how can I make an impact one person at a time. And before you know it, you've impacted the lives of many, because there's this trickle down effect, right? Like when you help one person, they're able to go out in the world and be a better person for those around them. And so you have this kind of domino effect that
it's a ripple effect. And it's like, I light your candle, you light their candle, they light their candle, and all of a sudden we're completely illuminated and as a community, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I know that, so being a business owner and being a mom, they're hard things to do on their own. I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm not a mother, so I don't know how you do it. I want to know,
it's hard.
How do you balance everything, kind of keep all of the balls in the air?
I get really, really, really clear on what it is that I want, why it is that I want it, what my highest values are, and everything that is not a high priority action and is a low priority distraction either falls off the list or gets delegated. And it's about clarity, and it's about giving myself the permission to constantly refocus, because it's not that we don't get distracted, but it's about our ability to be resilient and refocus. What happens oftentimes, let's say with my clients and with me, is that because I'm not immune, I'm certainly not Buddha in mudra pose on a mountaintop 24/7, right? I'm human. Is that we all, when we feel that pull into lower values and being distracted or being, depleted or whatever you want to call it, oftentimes we start to beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
And that sort of like pulls us even further down the mountain. And the name of the game is, am I able to refocus? And I'm the chooser of whether or not I beat myself up. But oftentimes I don't give myself the power to choose not to beat myself up. But because it's been a strategy for me, if I beat myself up, then I'm, sort of like the whip on the horse, like get it going, get it refocused, move faster. But if I choose to actually be kind and loving to myself and say, it's okay, sometimes we fall off the horse, you just get back on. I love you, you're doing great. Talking to myself the way I would one of my children, that I love and support. So I wouldn't beat my child up for making a mistake or falling off track. I would encourage them, right, to get back on. So it's doing that for myself and allowing that refocus to pull back up into my high value actions that really allow me to continue to move forward in an authentically confident and loving way.
Yeah. It's kind of the carrot versus the stick approach, and the positive affirmations versus the negative reinforcements. And so I love that you really hit the nail on the head there. But like you said, it is so hard to give ourselves that permission to rest, to refocus, to unwind, especially when you have so many responsibilities and priorities that you're managing. We almost have this like natural inclination, at least I do, to think, no, I have to get it done now. I have to keep going. If I don't do it now, the world is going to end. And the truth is, if I do it now, while I'm tired and while I'm having, even if they're not overtly negative thoughts, they're still not positive ones, and they're not broad view. They're not bird's eye. They're very honed in and focused on the task at hand, because I can't concentrate and think. When I try to operate from that space, I'm not able to perform well. So basically, I'm forcing myself to produce a mediocre at best outcome. And so recently, you know, my focus for this year has actually been unwinding and giving myself permission to rest, because that is like a curse word. That is a 4-letter word that Jocelyn Michelle like could not use before. And it's really like, okay, where's your mind at right now? Where's your brain? Where are your thoughts? Are the thoughts on I'm tired, I need a break, oh maybe I can do this tomorrow? Let's respect that and see what we can do. And what I've noticed, and what a lot of the clients that I've worked with have noticed as well as they're going through this journey, is that you show up the next day invigorated. You show up the next day ready to perform, and you're excited because you didn't work through and slave through the night trying to do something that you weren't even in the mental space to do.
Right. And that's really where the body, mind, heart, and soul approach really steps in, is because you have to listen to your body for those cues. You really have to listen for when your body, which by the way, I look at as like a super suit, right? I look at it as like a superhero suit. It is literally only designed to give you feedback to be in alignment with why the soul chose this body. So it really is this question of listening to the body if it's exhausted, right? And letting your mind get on board with the fact that you're honoring your body that does so much for you, right? It's not like you're a failure because you're resting when your body tells you that you need rest. You're actually advancing because you are listening to your body, which knows best what's best for you. And so often we bully our bodies and we ignore our bodies and we take our bodies for granted and override their signals, when really they're only there to support us in living into our fulfillment. Yeah. So I love that you caught that you were making rest this sort of naughty thing, when really rest is such a gift.
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with this culture of burnout. You know, there's like competing, well, maybe not now during COVID, but before, I was in the office at this time. And so people are comparing things like that. I know probably 10, 15 years ago, there's the commercial with the soup on the go with the stay-at-home mom who doesn't have time to eat. So she has to take the soup on the go because she can't, God forbid, sit down and take a meal. And we're like rewarding ourselves for like how many things we can do in a day. And, oh, I got 3 hours of sleep, but I'm still thriving. This is my third Starbucks of the day. And it's kind of the culture that we live in, almost to burn ourselves out.
Absolutely. There is this almost ego, even though ego is not the right word, it's super ego, but there's this attachment that we have to being heroic or being this martyr. You know, if I am going this long without sleep and I'm pushing through and I can do it, you know, look what I could do on 3 hours of sleep, or I'm doing 3 hours of sleep because I'm doing this big mission. And it's actually not something to have pride about, because there's a cost to it.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is identifying what's the opportunity cost and what's the cost to myself and my own well-being of forcing myself to continue to go against the grain. And we have these decisions everywhere in life, whether it's the cost of, because we think about cost in terms of money that we spend. And that's
just resources.
Yeah.
It's resources, and that includes energy. Cost is what is it costing me in my resources? And money is a resource, it's a form of energy, but it's certainly not the only one.
Yeah. And our time, for me, time is my most valuable resource in my eyes. Absolutely. Because it's the one resource that when you spend it, we cannot get back. Yes. That's right. And so you can make more money. I could lose everything today and be able to gain it all back. We hear lots of stories like that. The one thing I cannot do is renew my time. And so really looking at how we're doing that and how we're spending our time and whether we're filling our own cups up is so important. And
and speaking of time, it's funny, this just popped up for me as you were talking, is, time shrinks or expands scientifically based on the frequency with which we're spending it in. And that shows up even in our aging process. So the more spaceless and timeless we are by living in a flow state, living in our highest values, living at a high frequency, whatever you want to call it, it's almost like the more time we create for ourselves and the
Yeah.
younger we feel and actually are cellularly. It's very interesting.
It's so interesting. And it's so funny that you've said that, because a lot of my confidence conversations to date have been with women across many fields. The one thing that they have in common is this higher consciousness. And when I tell you, everyone looks so young, it really is a testament to how much, you know, those things that we do on a daily basis and the way that we think manifests itself, like you said, physically, because it is all a single,
Energy.
like, yeah, it's energy and it's all connected.
That's right. And when you think about like the women who go in and get these, you know, the lasers on their face and like all these latest technologies and stuff to make themselves look younger, all it is frequencies.
Yeah, I was
all
going
it
to say,
is energy.
it's literally an energetic frequency.
Yeah.
I was looking at one of the, because I bought one of the like at home things, and I realized that all it was doing is apoptosis and then ATP regeneration. I'm like, literally, my body can do that already. I just have to, rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So there's so much to be said for, you know, again, not just like time itself, but how you spend it, the quality of how you spend it. So yeah, that's a great catch.
Yeah. And speaking of quality of time and what we're doing for life, I think that's where we get into this avenue of passion and making sure that what we're doing for our work is something that we're passionate about. So I want to know sort of your background and if you were always doing this work or how you knew that you wanted to be a coach and change the lives of others.
Great question. Well, I would say that I didn't necessarily come out of the womb going, coaching is the thing for me.
Yeah.
But rather, I've always been fascinated with human behavior. And that first showed up for me with a passion for theatrical arts. So I was always very intrigued by and invested in anything having to do with performance, whether that was singing, acting, dancing. It was a safe place, if you will, for me to be fully expressive, because in my life, I was actually naturally very dramatic and expressive, but it wasn't always received well. And so I felt the need in my life to shrink. And it was only through performing arts that I could really expand into the fullness of my nature. And it also gave me the opportunity to dive into something that I really highly valued, which was understanding human behavior, psychology, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think it's so much more than psychology, but embodiment and all of that. And I really stuck with that the majority of my life. And by the time I moved out to Los Angeles from Philadelphia, where I grew up, and wanted to really pursue an acting career, I ended up with a lot of the limiting beliefs and sort of like naysaying from pursuing acting all those years sabotage me. But again, I'm not looking at it as a bad thing, because I think everything is for our growth, but it sort of pushed me, the current of that pushed me behind the camera. And then I was in the entertainment industry for about a decade. And I was working in production and talent management, and ultimately became the right hand to a lot of A-list celebrities, helping them, you know, build, maintain, and grow their empires. And I was in my final job in entertainment, and not knowing it was my final job, but I was working in entertainment, and I was working for a man who I shall not name, but he was in everybody's households every week. And he turned out to be somebody who fell into the category of #MeToo. And while I was working for him, I was also simultaneously taking this female empowerment and embodiment course to be a teacher, to become a teacher. So I was full-time working for this, you know, misogynist. And then I was also full-time, there goes the not sleeping thing, pursuing this female empowerment trajectory. And you can imagine in my delirium of not having a lot of sleep and sort of like a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth between misogyny and empowerment, there was a moment when this man engaged in a Me Too moment that literally just made me snap and say, okay, not only am I done with this job, but I think I'm done with the entertainment industry in general. It felt like on one side of the ping pong table was soul sucking, and the other side felt so soul fulfilling that I just said I quit. And even though I was flying around in private jets and I was making a ton of money and hobnobbing with the who's who, I threw it all away and said, I have no idea how I'm going to pay the bills doing female empowerment over here, but I'm going to jump and the net will appear. And I trust that this is my path. And I did. And I finished my training course. And at the end of that training course, I was actually offered a job as the creative director of that company and became a master teacher and all of these things at that company. And as I grew through that company, creating transformational journeys for women around the world, and we were touring with Tony Robbins and all these things, and then I realized that I actually had very different values than the company, and I saw all the things in the company that I thought were missing from what could have been offered to really improve the lives of the women within their midst. And so I went off and studied even deeper and got even further certified in all of the things that I thought were missing in that capacity, and then launched my own practice, and here we are.
That's amazing. And I love your story. You have a journey that's truly rooted in passion and in purpose. And if people want to connect with you or work with you as a coach, how do they get in touch? Give us the website, the social media, everything.
Absolutely, happy to. So my website is my name, alexisartin.com. And you can get to everything from there. You can get to my Instagram and my Facebook and my LinkedIn and all of the Shazaml, community conversation. And I have a brand new crash course out called Reinventing You. And there's a free webinar that you can take called See You Later Sabotage. And it looks at all the 7 ways that we get stuck. But the program, the 21-day Reinventing You crash course, it's 21 days, but you can do it at your leisure, is the proudest thing that I've ever done in my life. It is such a profoundly transformative and amazing course. And I priced it so that it's accessible to pretty much anyone that wants it, because I really talk about the ripple effect. Like, I want to light as many candles to illuminate the world as possible. And I think this product is really great contribution to that.
Yes, well, everyone head over to alexisartin.com to reinvent yourself and live in power and in purpose. Alexis, thank you so much for being on Confidence Conversations.
Thank you for having these conversations, because they are so important, and you are doing magical work in the world that is so needed, and we're really grateful for you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thanks.